There are many ways to define it, but the way we did it, let's say 25 years ago, when we were talking about and working on social innovation in a neighborhood context, was first of all that it is about satisfaction of needs of people, needs that have been badly satisfied, housing, now today even increasingly food provision, education, culture activities, and so on, access to public space. So let's replace the term realistic by a term which points more in the direction of equilibrium between different interests in the city, equilibrium between the desires of particular groups. Now, people who are poor, who live in conditions of deprivation, for them, desires are much more objective than for a banker who does not know what to do with his or her money. So there the desires become much more fantastic in a way, or fantamorganic, if you like. So desires for poor people, for people who know that life is very hard because they cannot pay for education, they cannot pay for housing, and so on. Desires for them are really related to the basis of human existence. So it's realistic, using your term realistic, it's realistic for them to keep claiming satisfaction of those needs. So realistic solutions for a city in the medium and long run are about reallocation of resources, redistribution of income from the private to the public sector, from the rich to the poor, and so on. And the next question is, what do we do with this? I already mentioned social housing, for sure. There's an absolute need in all European cities for more social housing. We can add to that it should be ecological, sustainable, that it should be built in environments also providing for public space, bits of nature, enjoyable social networks, and so on. Now, public space is not a square, it's not just a square. Squares are important. There are also playgrounds, cultural houses, walking trails across the city. You keep going. But even in a broader sense, public space is also the space for democracy, for participation, a forum on which all citizens can have their say. And this can be organized through district councils, speaking more explicitly to the city council, and so on. Of course, most of our problems in Europe are situated in cities. Now, the problem is that cities are often too organized at the level and the scale of the city and overlook the neighborhood level or the urban area level. It used to be different. I mean, in the 90s, quite supported by European policy, there was a very strong interest in neighborhood development. It was also the time when we started working on social innovation within a neighborhood context. So we have to return to the neighborhood, not to say that we should abandon the city level. I mean, district councils, neighborhood planning, neighborhood projects and initiatives have to be reinvigorated, but they have to fit also in a broader vision of the city as a whole. So we need better articulation, better connections between the governance of the neighborhood, district councils, different projects, associations, you name them, and the governance of the city as a whole. In principle, you could say that a state system in which you have many levels communicating well with each other is good for democracy. But it can, of course, be that the different levels have contradictory policy views. You can have a city that is progressive, that has a very strong social welfare program, and a region that is more working according to neoliberal terms, giving the tax benefits to the rich, for example, or investing in big real estate development, which is then a nuisance for the housing market, for the lower income classes, and so on. So in an ideal world, different levels of governance and of government, talking to each other, collaborating, reinforcing each other, would be very good for social innovation, would be very good for democracy, would be very good for participations. If you have strong civil leaders, strong and convincing and appealing leaders in associations and organizations, in most of the cases they also have quite a bit of a voice in the political arenas. So they could be triggers for good cooperation between state political leaders, leaders in cultural organizations, in the business world, and so on. Again, in the ideal world, and we have to think in terms of ideal, I mean market economists do that as well, in the ideal world you need a joined up leadership with different skills, but cooperation among these different skills. One is more a social leader, the other one will be much stronger in the organization of the different functions that are needed to lead towards successful social innovation. A third one will be very well connected to the political apparatus and will be capable of mobilizing movements that are having an influence on the transformation of the political system and so on. So there should be a synergy, in my opinion, between different types of leaderships. I mean, the city is an amalgam of different social realities and desires and people supporting these desires among each other. You know?